Okay. So I think we're going to have to try some of the queries using aesthetics, and then we'll do
Okay.
some with the account just to get familiar with, how it's going to show up. And let's see. So I got a list here. I just had to do it very quickly just to get enough time. So I think it should still be okay. Aesthetics. So this could be something that's going to go in your classwork box. I just want to make sure I have it. Yes. Okay, so now I'm all set. We've got like 9 different search queries I have put together, and I believe this should cover quite a bit on how you can use the aesthetics. The first one, for instance, this is typically how students like to attempt using the aesthetic, especially if they don't quite remember the spelling of a name. So supposing we have the first name
Your
Mary.
audio is really breaking up.
Okay, so let me
I'm
see.
having a hard time understanding you.
Okay.
It's like it's skipping every other word.
Really? Usually it's a very sturdy platform. I don't normally have the mic issue, but I don't know if it is the bandwidth or the internet behaving bad. I would try and see if I can still make things happen. If they don't, I have an external mic that I might be able to use here report. How about now? Can you hear me okay? You're
It's
muted.
better.
It's better. Okay,
Yeah,
let's
it's better.
hopefully it should work all the way through. If it doesn't, I have to look for the mic and I can just try that. That's the only thing, the only recourse I have.
Okay.
Anyway, so like the query that I'm trying to execute here is to find the middle name, which I don't quite remember the spelling for. It could be ELLAN or EN, I wouldn't know. So I would have to use an aesthetic. And the way it's set right now is that the aesthetic is actually connected to the last alphabet that I remember. So L is marked as the one that would take a reference or would allow for the aesthetic to take it as a reference. And then it is going to expand a little bit and encapsulate everything that is available to it and try to form the variants that apparently is something of a choice for the aesthetic to bring to you. Okay. Now with the name here, there is one problem that you can be sure that we would come across with using the aesthetics, especially in these words that you want to complete. For instance, one of the things the aesthetic will do is try to find the middle name, which is more of more prevalent or more popular. So it would use its own mind to bring the best relationship it can create with reference to what it has as the last name and the first name, and then insert whatever is missing as if it is a name, or the more popular name is just going to be inserted, or the completing of this middle portion would be dependent on how the search engine chooses to fill in this misspelled or partially spelled middle name. I'm going to use it in this browser, and this is how I've set it. So Mary Ellen Bates. That is here. Mary Ellen Bates, Ellen. If there is a name, and because Mary Ellen Bates is quite famous, like she's an author and she's pretty much everywhere with her publication and her writings. So that's where you would find Ellen, and I'm sure there is a name that is spelled as Ellan as well. So see if it is going to bring that. I guess it just keeps bringing Ellen. Okay, so this is the simplest version of the query. If there is another one which says Ellan, it should show up. It can also bring you just the middle name with the initials, starting with E. So it is kind of using its own memory of finding something which may resonate to its database as something that can be switched or be substituted. But I believe it is the same person. So that's just some of the limitations and some of the variations with which the search would react. Here you could find Ellan Addy Bates. Why is this coming up? Do you know? What could be the reason? Let's suppose Ellen Addy Bates was more prevalent and you don't need this. What is your strategy going to be when you wrote it like this, as I have said it? How would you be able to contain it so that it won't bring Ellen Addy Bates? I would just put everything within quotations, and that's how it is going to now make sure that Ellen Bates doesn't show up. So without quotes, it was picking up whatever it chooses, either last name or the first name or anything in the middle. So it probably would never bring this back to you, only if you put the entire name within quotation marks. Then we have the other example I want to go with. There is this Mary Jo. What the queries are showing between 1 and 2, the second one is showing that if you put the asterisk in the middle where you leave a gap between the name Joe and the gap between Bill, it is assuming that there could be anything in between, be a word or number of words, as long as the relationship between Mary Jo or Bill Gates somehow needs to be established as if it is one long search term. Okay. So let's see what it's going to do. Bill Gates. The most important situation, the only way that you will be able to control the asterisk to work with these two names is to put these within quotations. Okay, so Mary Jo, maybe. Now it is making more sense. So I guess the idea here is to throw some of these search queries for you to look at and see where you can create a better, more controlled and more precise precision queries. So this is what I did to make it more precise and to ensure that the names, the first and last names, are sort of part of the search and a relationship to whatever lies in between as number of words would be substituted or would be brought in when you put the uh, asterisk in between these two terms. Let me also show, use the word lose and make it better. Similarly, this one, make it better. I'm going to put this. These becomes kind of last notes that you can use later as reference. And Francis Coppola. Now, in the third query, what would be something that the aesthetic would replace as a middle name, which is more famous for someone named Francis. I forgot what the middle name is, but last name Coppola is usually attributed to the director of a movie, Godfather. So, it is more than likely that it will fill in or replace, the aesthetic would be replacing the middle name. I'm not sure what the middle name is, Francis. Anyway, let's try it. Francis Ford Coppola. Ford is the middle name. So you will keep getting Ford as a middle name. And like I said, this could be false positive situation where someone might have the same name or same middle name that is famous enough that it keeps coming back. And let's say you don't want Ford Coppola, then what are you going to do in this situation? I'm going to try something here. Maybe this should do it. Let me try this. I'm trying to make sure that the word for does not come in where your static is. Dr. Francis Coppola. So the word for is eliminated. This is one way of making sure that if you don't need something to be replacing the aesthetic, you can use a minus sign. Okay. Then I have so Christine, what is typically the type of search that you do mostly in your work for?
I I do lots of psychology terms. And I actually had a research appointment this morning, and the student is wanting adoption ethics.
Okay. So let's suppose we try to help you with what you're looking for. What's that again? The term itself, adoption,
Adoption,
and what else?
ethics.
Adoption ethics. Is
Yes.
it for human related or your
Yes, it's for child adoption, and I think they want to look at historically when adoption was used, what for the differences between open adoption and closed adoption and current thing. They're not quite sure exactly what they're looking for, so I'm doing I had a whole research appointment about how to use the databases and then narrow things down and going that way. Because I tried keeping just adoption ethics, and it was, they were talking about adopting bills or adopting laws or things like that. And it's like, that's not quite the type of adoption that I was looking for.
okay? So let's see if we can use the aesthetic here somewhere to what could be the other alternatives? Let's try this. Now I've used aesthetic here. Perhaps I could also use the aesthetic over here as well. So let's try this query. Complexity of adoption takes child adoption is allowed for children orphaned, child preparation. So it did pick up this part and added variants of what could be a continuation or the words that can follow with the adoption ethics. Mhm. Okay, so this was my attempt to find something that might be useful. Okay, and then in query number 4, you could see it is using some of these stop words that unless you put them within quotation marks, the search engine may not recognize it. So if you forgot anything in between and you put it within quotation marks and you place the aesthetic in between or to, it probably is going to pick something which is going to try to connect with the more famous sort of, I think these are the wordings from Shakespearean play, to be or not to be. So definitely it's going to bring not here. Don't have to run it, but that's just telling you that if it is stop words, you definitely have to put them within quotes. Trump voted, and obviously this is an old query. And then we have used the asterisk here on the, don't remember what bill it is, Trump voted on, so there could be, number of words missing, or it could be a single word here that's missing. So we can even use two asterisks at a time. Hi, Randy. Can you hear me? Is your mic open?
Yeah, it's open now.
You there? Okay.
Hello?
Yeah, you can hear me good, eh? Is it
Yes.
breaking up? Is my voice breaking up, or is it clear?
Is what clear enough?
No, I'm asking, is my voice breaking up for you, or
Yeah,
is
your
it
voice
clear?
is, yeah, I can understand that you are breaking up a little bit.
Yeah,
It
I
sounds
don't know,
like
for some
you had
reason,
something in.
it's acting up, it's choppy kind of. I don't know exactly what the reason is. So obviously it is something to do with my end of hardware, or could be a bandwidth issue. But it's quite unusual that it's happening today. And I have,
It seems
option.
it seems to be okay right now. So it might
Yeah,
have just been
so
a
it's
transient thing. I
unpredictable.
don't know.
Okay.
Well, there was the echo there. So yeah.
Mhm. So let me ask you, Randy, if you can just share any kind of sort of, search that you do, which typically is something that we can, you know, create some search queries for. Um, Anything that is of interest to you for designing a query, particularly using the asterisk. That's what I'm trying to do.
You could say energy efficiency and taxes.
Okay, so let me write it down first. Okay, so what is it again? Can you please repeat that?
Yes, energy, efficiency, actually we should say incentives. Yeah, I do.
These three
I get a lot
words,
of questions about this.
yeah, you're probably looking for different ways in which incentives are offered for maybe adding energy efficiency through a process or through a device of some sort.
Yeah, no, hey, that's a good question. So generally it's for residential or commercial buildings, either people's homes, or a commercial building could be anything from a store to a hospital, a warehouse.
Is it the cost incentives offered by the supplier of energy, or is it a device related or something that involves putting some equipment? Or, I mean, there are people or there are companies I know that they're offering some energy efficiency devices as well.
Yeah, right. And so the incentives could be the equipment itself, or for the equipment itself. Generally, it is. Or, you know, and the equipment could be air conditioners, or it could be insulation. It could be windows. You know, anything that just, it could be lighting. You know, if you look around your house and look at all the different things that make up the home or the energy systems in your home, there's probably an incentive for it.
Okay, got it. So if I have to look or insert the asterisk to give a little bit of room for the search to find the missing elements or something that I'm not incorporating right now, but I will emphasize on certain words which are mandatory or which are referential or primary words, but anything that might be search might be able to play with, I have to insert an asterisk somewhere. So if I have to do that, I could write probably like this. So I've replaced with the word incentives with the asterisk. So
Yeah.
energy efficiency could probably do well if I just leave it with the asterisk in there. Let me try this. See the word assessment? That
Oh,
could
yeah,
be.
I'm very familiar. Yeah.
So you can see with the asterisk, it is helping you to find certain terms which you probably dropped or you didn't occur in, at the time you were looking for the right words. And, so there could be another, advantage of using the asterisk is it's going to find some words for you which are more popular. So today we are running some search queries, using asterisks, and then we'll do some using around so that we get done with proximity search with the hands-on experience on how we can be more creative
Yes.
in both. So that's the objective. Then I have another search, which is where I've got, I think this is a very good example. So if I have this query, and you could see that there were 3 date formats. And then, I wouldn't know with reference to California election for this search term, I'm not sure if October, say, whatever the day is, and I don't quite know the day, and I don't know the date format, but I have an idea that 3 different date formats could be the option, or any one of these 3 formats would work. And at the same time, I'm not sure of the day. Besides the date element, you a lot of times you're not precise. You're not sure what the day might be or even the month. So the best thing that you could do is to put the asterisk as a find for the search to look for with relationship to whatever your search term is. So this could be one, this could be another, this could be the three, but it's like, you can killing two birds with one stone, basically, is what could be said about how we have designed this one. You can see that, and you can even add another or instance, if there is another format in your mind. But anyway, this covers a lot in terms of the day. Like in this format, perhaps anything to do with California election might show you a day which could be, say, 14th. In the other one, it could be 15th or it could be 14th. You never know. Again, this is all unknown. And this placeholder is only going to work with what is on the left and right of it. As if these two references are not going to extend as a continuation of something before, let's say, the word October or after 2003, because it has that demarcation or enclosure with the quotation marks. So this is where you're going to control these precision results, which is going to default to and look for the day only, but not to exceed or not in continuation with anything else. So if I run this search, I can get different types of results or different um, ways in which, because California election is a very broad term, it also depends on how precise you are or how, how much of emphasis you want to give to those terms as if they are, primary search terms. You can't do without them. So depending on how you have phrased them, that's how it's going to create that relationship to find these dates. So California elections, and let me see if I can get the dates. So the first one is extracting it from a PDF document, and it is giving me October 7th. Then I find another document, which is probably a news source coming from CNN. Here the date is October 8th, so the more precise I am with this seems like too generic. I can be even more precise. I could probably write the name Davis, Gary Davis. So if I put, or let's say I don't quite remember, like if I have to write GOV dot or not. So here is another aesthetic that I'm going to put in right here. And if you don't see the word Gary Davis here, it doesn't mean it won't exist. So you can click on this link and you'll certainly find it. But Gary Davis over here, Governor Gary Davis is coming automatically. Governor Gary Davis is coming. So it did find GOV. But if we were too precise, let's say we wrote GOV dot over here, it probably would have ignored this one, which is without dots. So the aesthetic would help to include anything that is with or without dots as if it is a placeholder for something that is going to find the continuation of that with the first name Gary and last name Davis. Could be gov dot, or it could be just gov, governor, GOV. That's where we can apply the aesthetics besides just the date part. Okay. Or where it is going to find the day. And you could see that the format of the dates are all different. I guess this is clear enough. Then we have query 7. This is another query. You can use the asterisk, look for a complete statement or something that is, more than a few words, something extracted from a book, not knowing who the author is. So we've put the word author in there that it finds the actual author for the book. And the book itself is a mandatory return. So we're emphasizing we're looking for the book and perhaps conquering the whatever is missing, substitute with the asterisk in place. It is going to look for a statement or a para or some lines which include these words altogether. Now, if I put the quotation marks here, I am perhaps restraining it or giving it a less of an opportunity to find all those words which fall before the word conquering, as if it is part of a sentence and it is not given enough room to look for the reference or any context, whatever number of words or whatever, the sequence of words that starts this sentence. So it might create a situation which will not bring you better results. So sometimes you don't really need to put those sentences or phrases inside of the quotation marks. Give it a breather, give it more room. Because now what will happen is that it is going to find maybe there were 5 or 6 words before the word conquering, or where the ending word grief is a continuation of something that would give it better reference or would make it easier for the search to find the missing parts. You see, so we can make that choice. Now, along with this, there is additional words that we use as reference, like the word price is there. Okay, and I have not put it within quotes, and I guess it is by design or intentionally not put. Maybe the word price is not used. Sometimes they don't use the word price, but they, just use a dollar sign and give it the value. For that reason, you don't want to put the word price within quotation marks. So it just depends on what results you're getting. So you can also at the same time know evaluating those results if they're not adequate, or where you can improve it, or certain words that it is confusing and not bringing the correct results. You can therefore choose whether to put certain words within quotes or leave it outside, or perhaps replace it with another word. So at the same time, we have used a notation of a dollar sign. The dollar sign is a stop word, meaning that does not have the value for the search to include as if it is part of a sentence. However, because and recently they have changed the algorithms to give more value to the notations and symbols. And some of the notations and symbols are actually collected and organized and basically given a sort of meaning, like the dollar sign, the @ sign, for instance, the hashtags. Hashtags usually used to do search in social media or for finding social media connections and accounts. So all those notations are getting included. We have a list of those notations, and they're stated where we start with the advanced search operators. After we get done with the Boolean search, pick the topic on Boolean search, at the very end you would see a list of those notations and symbols that are now recognized. So we still use a dollar sign just to give it a more context. Then we also can restrain it further to only find whatever we're looking for inside of Amazon store and not outside of it. And as I said, certain times you would use a minus sign with the site operator to exclude results coming from a certain domain. You could do that. If you don't want it from Amazon, you could do minus sign site. Let's try this and see if we can get to it, get to the book. Zero results. That's very odd. So what I did is that I basically enclosed it within the quotes to allow for the search to find something around these words. Incidentally, I did find the result and it is quite satisfactory, it seems. So let's look for the statement conquering the whatever the statement says. So I'm going to open the link. Okay. Conquering the grief. Conquering the mysteries and lies of grief. So it did pick it up. It did have the word author, and it has the $ value, and it is defaulting to Amazon. So we were able to get to it. But what we did is that we had to put it within quotation marks. I guess without the quotes, the search was not able to quite find content pages which are endless or which has a continuation of words that could be endless, or perhaps it is too wide of a search for the search engine. And it does that if it is too wide of a search sometimes. And those wordings are not easily identified in those content pages. So there's billions, millions, billions of pages. So it does get that sort of confused, it gets into a confused state and would ask you to make it more precise or confine it so that it can work within that parameter. So in this case, it did work better with the quotes if I didn't. And there are times when I don't have to use the quotes. But in this example, it seems that the quotation marks were missing. And by the way, these search queries are intentionally are not supposed to be 100%, or not supposed to be working 100%, so that we can correct them. But this is part of the exams. When you see your final exams in CIRS, you will get in this kind of a situation. So, if we are learning a little bit about fixing queries that are not bringing results, it could be something that is, typically is coming in your exams. So next would be to just sort of get the concept and try to memorize it. Like this one, for instance, if I can just name it as if it is incorrect, I can say that this is correct. This is also correct. Perhaps you can check it on your own and see. Another question in the exam would come like this. Just as an example, I'm not giving you 100% on what would be coming, but just as an example. So if there was a query that did not have the quotes enclosure here, okay, you know that this, then you have to look for the concept of stop words, whether they're entertained or not. And because these are stop words, you do have to put them within quotes. And there will be an option to see if this one is better or this one is correct versus this one. Even though these could be executable, but at the same time, the examiner is more focused on looking at the concept of whether or not you can differentiate based on what you've learned about stop words. And to the best of my memory, I remember I told you that stop words needs to be put within quotes so that they're enforced, otherwise they'll be ignored. So based on that theory alone, you will be examined. And this is why I am asking you to be a little bit more mindful on how we are correcting few queries and where we are increasing their efficiency or making it better. Even though they're executable, but there could be a better way to phrase or to put the query together. Now, in the example 8, we definitely would want to use the quotation marks if we are using the asterisk at the beginning of a search statement and also at the end of it. That is where, you know, the asterisk would mean, or asterisk would otherwise mean, if you don't put them within quotes, what might happen is that if I don't put this within quotation, again, it will become a very wide search for the search engine to find, you know, what could be a continuation as if it is one single sentence that is incomplete. Let's suppose best of search is, you wouldn't mind capital letters or small, but let's suppose this is middle part of a statement or a search phrase, and search behavior has changed. You see, this could have a lot of results based on, you know, these words being too common as part of a sentence or be part of a long sentence or part of a para somewhere. So more difficult for the search to find its variants, which could be, you know, a lot of search results without putting them within quotation marks. So what quotation mark is going to do is going to use a reference, and hear me out on this one, reference to 3 words, and it says nowhere in their algorithms, nor does Google reveal, but when we experimented with it, we found that there is a minimum of 3 words that follow, let's say, last word change here as a reference to what precedes or what is before, you know, those 3 words. So whatever it's going to measure with, usually it's 3 words. But as soon as you open up or you don't use the quotation marks, it is going to do search for endless number of words. And same way, in the beginning, you could see that the word search could be a continuation of something, could be numerous or number of words before the word search. And unless you put them within quotes, it is again going to look for a lot of words before it, and it's not going to have a good reference. Good reference usually asterisk is established with 3 words that would be a contained number of words to match with reference to whatever is placed in there. Only when you have used the quotation marks. So in 8, it's going to measure or look for 3 words before and 3 words after as minimum number of words. There can be 5 words also. It's not a fixed thing, but generally it is the 3 words. And it's only going to work if you have placed them within the quotes. So whenever you find that the search is not bringing back the right results, you have to refer to notes, or usually it comes with a lot of practice. As you keep on doing searches, you will get used to the behavior or application of those notations or whatever operators you're using, and it will become kind of it will be ingrained in your memory, and it will become what you call a kind of a learned approach, which would stay with you. But practice is what it requires. At the same time, if the examiner is not going to be too lenient, they would expect you to have some sort of judgment on what would be a better option. So for that reason alone, passing the CIRS exam, you will have to be, you will be put to test on what I'm explaining today. So today's lecture is very important in that sense. We have done a lot of variations of how rest of the advanced operators that we did. I think we have a very good concept on how they work. We have to do a lot of complex search queries that incorporates different approaches, including different operators to work together or interoperate with each other, just to for you to get a same sort of correction or same sort of a direction that I'm giving you right now for aesthetic and around. That part we'll have to do in our next lecture, and that would conclude our search operators building complex search queries. So then that's when we'll do it on Friday, I believe. And anything that we start after this week will not include search queries anymore. One of the reasons I'm saying this is to give you a plan and for you to be prepared for it and be available. It's going to be important for if you have to ask any questions. And the second thing is that if you have anything that comes to your mind that you want me to explain about search queries, Friday would be the best day or the only day, because the week after I'm starting with what we call traditional or conventional research methods, which is not query based, but rather concept of how the industry expects you, or as a researcher, you have to understand certain jargon of the trade, or certain methods and methodologies that are named or they're given a recognition as standards for you to do research, any kind of research work. Okay, so at this point, let's just take a short break. We'll do 10-15 minutes break. And then I will continue with just the last one that we have to finish up. After that, I want to start with around to do some examples. And 15 minutes, it's a short break. I'll see you in a little bit. I'm back, and I hope you can hear my voice, and the video is clear on your side. You can look at my screen. One query, which is more important than any other, which I would like to discuss with you using the aesthetic. It's about, by the way, can I get a nod from either one of you to just make sure you can hear me and all that is clear to you on your side? Can just
You're clear as day.
okay, great, excellent. Now, with the aesthetic, it is very particular about where you're going to place it in a phrase or in a sentence somewhere. Specifically, we are going to take an example of something which might come across as the most complex way of defining the placement or the position of where you're going to put the asterisk. Um, I guess the best way to explain it is to look at what is one of the rules or references, you could say, in the legal language of, how they put the clause and the reference to the clause or a certain rule, where, they have a mention of things like R dot S could be something that has a reference to what is coming after it as a reference to a rule or a particular clause in a law. And it says RS has got a dot in between. So you don't want to miss any of this. You've got another dot after S, and then there is a comma. After it is a gap of a single character followed by 1985 and so on. You can see that clearly over here, right? So supposing if I have to use the asterisk as a placement for finding something which I'm not sure about, and this, I guess, arrow upward is just giving you an indication that there is a gap in between. So it is not something you're going to put in the query, but something that is saying that this part or anything that is followed by the looking at the original statement after the comma here is the gap of a single character with the 1985 and then another comma. And supposing you don't quite remember the RS, or you don't quite remember whatever else is following it, it says C dot T dash 13 with a gap. And then again, there's a comma and another character gap. And so it continues. So it becomes very complex. And supposing you don't quite remember the range or anything associated with what is followed after, I'd say, C, 1985, C, or whatever is following it as a range. You could use two dots to give it a range, and then you can split it as another segment and use the asterisk again with a comma and a gap with 2014. So everything that is following it can also be connected using the two dots. This is one of the most complex search queries, okay, with the asterisk. This example is perhaps not only difficult to convey, but at the same time, it is important enough that you can not ignore it. This may or may not come in the exam because most of the students are not able to attempt it correctly. So we had discussed this before in the meetings, and for the examiner to make it simple for the students to understand and to run. The actual query that we did make out of what we are trying to find here in A is set in example 14 right here. This is how we've written it. But just to show you the placement of asterisk, and then to confine it with the quotes, and then to connect it with two dots is giving you an example. B2 is, or you could say that what is translated here is shown after the is equal to sign, where the missing part is described in the which is highlighted in yellow color, and that which is available is in blue color, just to make it even easier to understand. So when we do it this way, we are being very careful about the placement of asterisk. We have designed this search just so that the students would not miss out on how the static can be actually run. And I'm going to run it in a in a moment. But there is another one that can also work. Here is another one that is coming from a citation. If you're looking for a citation that has to do with the Trademark Act in Canada, you can see the placement, which makes it slightly easier. I've not used the two dots. What I did here is just giving segments of these references, which could be multiple references, but they all connect to each other. Apparently, the quotation marks enclosure is segmenting the, what could be the missing components inside of the quotation part. So with the first one, you could see after the comma, we have a gap of a single character, and then whatever else is following, we can put it there. All other references are available as well. So let's suppose I copy this and run it and see what it's going to do for us. I am not sure if it is the newest query example or whether or not it's going to work, but assuming it is workable, you can see it one more time, how it is set. Bring everything. Amendment citations 2018 2014-C to bring it out. (1985) Yeah. So if you fail to put it correct, let's do the other example also, the first one that we were looking at, this one. And if we did not do it correctly, bringing different clauses, SCs, the accurate, I mean, it will get this part and this part, but everything else that was to follow RSC is not going to show up precisely. So if you want something with precision and not something that is spread, in the unstructured way, you will get into problems. Not to the same, see now you've got C42 or all other clauses will show up. So the idea here is to make sure that they are precisely matching the location of where you want that information to be substituted, or that temporary place holding is reserved for the information that is specific or is running with those locations or with the exact spots where you have placed your statics. Otherwise, it will, not bring exact results. So we have to, if we focus on these examples, you would see the placement is most accurate. Now, the next one we will talk about is around, the around operator. That we can see in page 254. So I'll take you to page 54 of the book. It's a lot of information in the book. If you go through reading everything in the book, it's probably, it's going, not only it's time consuming, but by the time you get to your exam, it's going to take you a long time. But whatever we end up discussing in the class is mostly focused on your exams, things that would show up or be covered in the exam. So page 254. In fact, let's take this example, for instance. In the example 6, you could see that we want in the PDF file to include the name Bhaskar Mitra and Nick Craswell to 2017. So this is a statement, or basically something that we can remember, something that we know of. As first name, last name, including the A&D and Nick Roswell as a citation reference. And if we don't remember the entire thing in between, and of course, the quotation makes sure that it is exactly spelled and structured as a one single search term. So everything will have to match exactly. And this makes it much more tighter query. However, mostly we don't quite remember how they're actually set, for comparing or for matching. So we would instead be able to use a round operator, and that would make it easy for us. So where we have Mitra as the last name that we remember, and Craswell could be another last name, but we don't quite remember the first name. So it gives you an idea that the best query to run in this situation should be a proximity operator like around. Okay. So that is why we have used around with 3 words or maximum 3 words in between, assuming that's what's going to complete it. It could be 3 words or less, could be 2 words in between, or could be just 1 word. So on approximation, we just used 3 as the maximum number of words. And if we ran this one, in the search, we should ideally be able to find PDF document with both of these names. You can see here Mitra and Crosswell. That's one. Then you've got Bhaskar, Mitra, and Nick Crosswell. 2017 is not enclosed within code, so you can get 2018 here as well as 2017. But the number of words in between these is going to be less than 3 or 3 maximum. And 3 words are counted or 2 words are counted. Let's say in this example, what is the word Mitra and Crosswell? So you got in between these 2 words that were missing. But supposing you just remembered Bhaskar and Crosswell and you put 5 here, okay, you could write it Bhaskar here, you can write Crosswell, but at the same time, let's say you put 6 words. If you put more words, it's going to look for it. If not, it is going to come back to 3 words or 2 words or 1 word that is in between. So it won't matter much if you know that they exist together or in the close proximity. You can use 6, but if you just used 1, then you would get just 1 word. Normally, we don't use 1, we use more than 1. You would still get it, but more than likely, let's see what it's going to show up first. Shows Bhaskar and Crosswell. So the gap in between is not showing up. So 1 or less means that, just could be 1 word or anything less than 1 word. It's going to restrain it. One of the more interesting things, we can come back to 254 in a little bit, but I just remembered that there is a very good example for using a round operator. But we have dealt with that in a situation as if it is a case study or it is an example where you found yourself stuck in a situation of naming or finding names for someone that may have a relationship with somebody else to get to the right person. This example, I believe we have on page 202. What happened here is that there was a person named Dave that you met, assuming that you met somebody named Dave in an event or somewhere where you just casually shook hands and then that person disappeared or was no longer traceable. Later, you wanted to get to that person or find information about that individual. So the thing that you might end up doing is that you have to create a relationship chart first to get the basic information, like where you met the person. So you have that occasion or that event where you went. You also know that Dave would is a is got a Christian name David, and that's the derivative, which is Dave. So that's first name discovered, obviously. You could make a profile, the best or as much as you can gather as information components. One of the components is connections of Dave. To get to David or Dave, you look at Dave's connection, assuming that you saw that Dave met or shook hands in that event with Glenn Keane, Tim Gunn, and Rollins, and all these names that you can recall. These are the people that you know. And at least these people have some connection or might have some connection with David. So you're going to use the, and of course, you did the search and you found that the name David Smith, David Kelly, David Bauer, all these names starting to show up from using the site operator that takes you to that event or that website, which is for this event. And of whatever you discovered with the name David, you pick that up. You saw there's so many different Davids that has something to do with this event. Now, because all these are different Davids and you don't know which of these Davids were connected with any of those relationship connections that you have built here or the list that you have here, then you would have to run another query which would use around operator to see the relationship of different Davids that you found with these people to come to a result that would have something to do with any of those two individuals, like David and the other connections. I hope you are following me here. This would make it even better. So let's say there are 1, 2, 3, 4 Davids that you found when you ran this search query. And you don't know which one of these Davids had relationship with those connections I showed you. What I would do then in that case is that I'm going to build search queries to find which one of these 4 different Davids have anything to do with Glenn Keane and Rollins, all these connections that you saw. What I would end up doing is that I will start to build queries like Glenn Keane is one of the connections with, let's say, David Smith. I've used around 5 as a starter. I could even use, increase it more, like around 10, which would give more words to play with for the search to look for. So, keep using Glenn Keane as the main reference to different Davids, like David Barton, David Bauer, David Kelly, and you might be able to discover something that connects both of these uh, you know individuals. So this is the one of the ways that you, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack, but around opens up more opportunities to find relationships between people, to be able to track them or go through those that know of someone that you are looking for. Okay. So this is actually a real example. So you could see how I discovered that Stephanie Gurlin, who was one of the connections, had something to do with David Bauer, which we found or which was discovered in the search when we used around operator. So easily you could ask Stephanie, who you might know, to ask to check to see if Stephanie knows David Bauer or if David Bauer is the same person. So that's like, making around as the only option to find something which otherwise for which you don't have a lot of reference or a lot of information. This for the example. Going back to page 202. Yes, page 202. when we are in our next class, which, like I said, is the last class for operators, um, I have to pull some complex queries from different areas of search. Like I cannot cover everything, but what I would end up doing is look for queries that are of special interest to my students. For instance, where I have search properties, you have to tell me if this is the area of your interest. Like in chapter 16, in chapter 17, we have news search, articles, blogs, groups, forums, all of these, which is page 221. We also have an option to do search for business and industry related search, like finding leads, finding products, services. Then we have find names, email, contacts, and all these to create, leads, or to actually do a lot more search to find individuals, even job opportunities and resumes. And because we have only so much time on hand, we can be very selective, or based on what your specific interest is. You may want to give me a little bit of an idea starting from chapter 14, which has got these areas of the type of search queries. You will say, okay, chapter 14 is more interesting, chapter 15, or part of chapter 14, part of chapter 15. I'm interested in these specific queries. In chapter 17, we've got a lot more that we can cover. And these queries are obviously something that otherwise, there are like 400 some queries in there, especially between chapter 14 and the chapter where it ends with, I believe that's chapter 14 through 17. So 14, 15, 16, 17, there's 4 different chapters, and you can tell me which is of particular interest to you. If I don't hear from you, let's say through a chat or email, if you can't decide right now, then I'll have to make my own selection, because we can only do 15 or 16 queries. Generally, that's the maximum that time allows us. And I'm obviously going to find some complex ones, which is going to basically cover major areas. And all of these, if you look carefully, they're giving you a scenario or a situation. So it is granular enough and it is detailed enough that you can just mark them quickly, looking at, let's say, if you're searching for something to do with date and timestamp, you can also look for geolocation, finding somebody's location, and so on. So chapter 15, I will pull something from chapter 15. How about you, Kristen? I'm just scrolling it so that you can connect with it and you can see. You've got this one.
Right now, chapters 14 and 15 are the most interesting for me.
Okay. That's good. Anything on chapter 17? Like videos, forums?
I think 17 would be interesting for me to learn from my students. It's chapter 16 that would be helpful in super narrow, if for specific reasons. If you work in real estate, that's when this is really going to help.
How about looking for opportunities or some outside work as a contractor?
Possibly. That's not where my interest is right now. So
No worries. I'm just suggesting. Then we have got social media search.
Yeah, because it's,
Uh,
I think
yes.
it's like the six, like the chapter 16, the property available for rent and Airbnb, that's interesting. So,
It's okay.
are
We can put specifics. It's even in those specifics, there are 10 queries for each areas. So
yeah,
we chapter 15, chapter 14. Then we have rental or looking for property. Okay. All right. So it should be good enough. So this is the advantage of you being in the class. Those that are not here, 17, Randy is suggesting for the scientific research. Okay. See, this way I can actually, and even if we are not able to finish and all of it, let's say in our next class, I'll still continue with it so that you get the maximum advantage or a bonus for attending the class. So I would rather, do it that way, just as an appreciation of you being there and being more consistent. Um, and Listy might be interested in something too. So hopefully, because today was her dental appointment, I'm sure she'll make it in our next class. So all settled. Now I have my homework to do also this way. I'll may prepare it for you for the next class and to be more specific. I'm going to try to finish up around and see if is anything that I left out. I'm going to get to it. This was page 254. So I'll just quickly go to page 254. Okay, and see some more examples on file type. So file type, you know how the around operator works. Just that some of the rules you have to be aware of. Anytime you're going to use around, you're going to make sure that it has terms on the left as well as on the right of it. So you cannot leave it as a space, You can even let go or not necessarily have to use the word or the text crosswell. You can use the date as well. It would also entertain things like notations such as the dollar sign. It would pretty much work with that as well. It will also work alongside other operators like this one in URL we have used, in text we have used. Okay. So around is only it's flexible enough. It would give you that area to use other operators. Let's say if you had to build a complex query and with a good understanding of the advanced operators like in URL and in text, you may want to nudge the search or move it in the right direction by using a combination of these operators alongside the around. Uh, you see that we have used in URL edu, which means we want all the links or URLs that contain an extension or the word edu in it. And I explained to you in the in URL, you have to be mindful that edu, when you use in URL with edu, it will do two things, or it might do two things. One is that it will just look for a word education and only and only a part of it would be matched, and still it would be effective and would still run with the in URL. So if you want an extension that is coming, or the web site is from an education somewhere, you should use a dot here and you can use an asterisk before. Just remember that it is a classic exam question. That's why I'm a little concerned about it. Even though I've explained it, I don't mean to repeat things, but I feel that this is where students make mistakes. We don't have a lot of time to run the query as such, but I have about enough that I can explain the query, uh, what I'm talking about. So let's suppose we have in URL edu, we may want to use it like that. This way it knows it's an edu extension. And even if you don't use the asterisk, it would still work, as long as you have .edu there as if it is an extension of a domain. But the only advantage of putting an asterisk here is that it would firmly hold it as if it is an extension or a domain with .edu at the end, right? So this is, more solid versus this approach. And this one is not as good. And the reason I explained. So I would probably make it look like this. I want the URL to be coming from educational institutions. And once it gets to those pages, it would look for the word citations in the body of text, meaning that the word citations, normally you don't find the word citations in the URL. So no point in putting it there. Even in the title part, you don't find the word citation or citations because it is a reference that usually exists at the end of document or as something which is cited, somewhere in those documents. So, and because the document text is captured inside of the body of text in the middle portion, that's why we used in text, and with the word citations. Mitra around 3 Crosswell 2017, what it would do is basically segment the entire query. Again, just parenthesis just for explaining it, right? And this would act as A and D. I'm converting it into the whenever you're confused about, your query, how you've designed it, you can convert it into an algebraic expression. I do it sometimes, but because I'm so, it is so much ingrained in my mind that I don't necessarily have to do it. But apparently, this could be one way of expressing the two combinations or two segments. It is not an or, but rather another and in between. And this and is not just A and D. It can, well, let's not confuse you anymore. So this is how it is going to come across. It will resolve this part and then attach to this part, which is a constant, a restrictor, and it would execute much better. By adding in text and in URL. Let me see if there's anything else worth mentioning. Another good thing about using around operator is shown here in this example. Never mind the number 10. In the simplest way to explain number 11, convey the idea of using around. You can see that around is looking for the term search engine FISNA. I don't know what that means. Let's suppose this is part of a longer sentence, or this is the wording that you want to have association with Jonathan Schreiber. You've used around 10. So in a para somewhere where you have a paragraph, how can okay, let me explain it this way. Let's go to AOFIRS, my favorite .org. And let's suppose I choose this page to create a search query using around. That's what I'm going to do. So for now, let's put the previous one on board and let's experiment with this. Let me pick up something which is very specific, very peculiar, which is identifiable as a reference that only is mentioned on this page. You will, let's say, I pick this part and I'm going to insert it in the search. Of course, I want to use the quotation marks enclosure, and I say part of a sentence, which is not in the same paragraph down here. And let's just also assume that the number of words, what would be the number of words here? Could be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 30. So 50 some words, assuming, and it is occurring in the second paragraph, not in the first one where I've chosen the the words here, and I'm going to put this as another set of wordings. Put here. Putting a very large number is going to make the search falter a little bit, because now there is a lot of room to have, or there's a lot of possibility that these could be found somewhere in other content pages as set of words, that are structured exactly as they appear right now. So it could be a competitive, could be a competition there. So let's suppose to be on the safe side, I use 60. Yeah. Usually the search works best when you're using around with 10 to 20 as number of words, because it is more focused. So anytime you are bringing it with the less of a number of words, it is considered more precise. Now 60 is just, trying it. I'm not sure if I'll get to it, but let's give it a shot and see. 0 results, because the number is too large. Eh? So what else can we do to make it happen? There could be situations where you might want to use a lot of number of words. So what are you going to do? The best thing I would do is, first I'm going to try to get rid of the quotation marks. That's first thing I'm going to try and see if I can get to it or not. There's a gap of a single character here. There's a gap of a single character here. Let me try it now. Did we get to it? Benefit of CIRS certification. I think this is the page. So whenever you have the number of words that are large enough, or they are, too many of the words in between, it's always a good idea to open up the quotation marks, because search engine needs a little bit of flexibility. And you have to allow that sometimes, especially in the type of searches that are not bringing any results. You can open up the quotation marks. In the previous instance, or in one of the examples, I had to put it within quotes to make it work. And in this situation, I had to remove the quotes because the number is too large. And it is by understanding that this could be one of the options that you can use to get to something, or versus getting zero results, you can always open it with the removing the quotation marks. And I think the example we did was this one. I remember this was the one, and we had to put these wordings within the quotation marks. It wasn't bringing the results, and remember, we had to put these within quotations. Oh, this was for the aesthetics, right. Aesthetic works somewhat has a behavior similar to when we're using around, because it is by default, it is the proximity search. So there are times when we put certain terms within quotes, other times we have to loosen it a little bit. Is this something that I'm able to explain? If you can tell me if you felt that there was something lacking or you couldn't understand. This was our query. You
I
think you'll be
understand.
able-
I understand it. It's just I'll get it more ingrained in my head once I actually start doing the queries.
Right.
Because I'm finding that for me, it's like you explain it fine, and the book is clear. It's just it's until I start doing it, it doesn't really stick as well.
Exactly. And I guess what would happen in situations like this, instead of just remembering it as an example that I gave you, just think of the concept where you get stuck with any sort of search using around, and the number is too large, or wherever you feel that it is not executing properly and you've used put quotation enclosed, statements or phrases, you would try to open it up and then try it again, so that this could be a solution for you to get to it or make it work for you. It's
Yeah.
just that basic thing that will occur when you get into this situation. Second thing is that if you have these wordings, one of them are within quotes, others you may have left intentionally outside of the quotes, what is going to happen, right? So
Yeah.
that could be another situation. So you might want to try, learn from it. That's how we sort of, and there's only so much we can experiment with or come up with,
Oh yeah.
and because Google is growing too much, its algorithms keep changing, things that were working previously all of a sudden they don't
Don't.
execute.
Yeah.
So let's so you can experiment it.
Yeah, because I tell my students that research is an art as well as a science, and sometimes it's just trial and error. And you have to go through like 20 different things to find the one that's going to work, and it can always change.
It can. And I think with the course that we have put together, our objective obviously is to keep practicing with, or we have people who are doing online research exclusively, and they come to me, they tell me about situational issues with things that are not set by the book, or it is not coming as I explained to them, and I learn from it, we all learn from it, and then we make those amendments or changes. Usually we come up with a new edition of the book every 3 to 4 months. Sometimes it can be later than that. So keep that in mind. There is this gap, which is, not bringing everything that is changing. It's changing. It's a very dynamic kind of skill for anyone to just, think of it as an absolute rule, a book of rules. It's not. That's the situation. I think we've covered
Hey,
enough of the
hey, Randy here.
Yes, Randy, please go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned there's a new edition of the book every 3 or 4 months. So now that I'm a member of AOFIRS,
Yes.
how do I get the new editions? Are they available to me through my membership? Or do you know?
What happens with the new edition is that it automatically is sent out to all members, and anyone who had taken a training in the previous 1 year after, they've started with the class, with the first date of taking the class until 12 months after, whatever changes are coming or anything that gets upgraded are automatically sent to them. There is this automation which, always make sure that you get the email. So email is where you would find it. Otherwise, there is newsletters that we are way behind on newsletters. Thing is that it gets announced in the newsletters as well, but there's a greater chance that you may miss it. So email is what you have to look for. As long as you're checking your inboxes, it will come to you. You won't get a call from us, or it's not that there's any other way that we can announce it, except for the newsletter, which may be delayed or late, or even take more than a month to get issued. So
Okay.
so far,
I
I think,
understand. Okay.
yeah, so far we have completed everything that has to do with proximity operators, and I'll see you day after tomorrow. That's when the action is going to be. There'll be plenty of queries I'll be putting together for both of you. So see you then. Let's call it. Let's conclude the lecture. My throat is hurting now. I think we've done enough.
Okay.
All right. All right. So
Thanks.
see you day after. Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye bye.